Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First, let's talk about this bombshell revelation of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas's wife, Ginni Thomas, sending text messages to former President Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, about overturning the 2020 election. Yes, the wife of the Supreme Court is urging President Trump to overturn the 2020 election. We got the tweets. We got the text messages. We got to show you. Also, updates and recap of this week's Supreme Court confirmation hearing, and a little bit of what Senator Cory Booker had to say to Judge Jackson. And of course, we got to talk about anti-CRT efforts. They are making their way in 35 states. We check in with Dr. Lamar Shields, who is an educator, to give us his insight about this movement. And then later, Amazon is dropped as a supporter of the Seattle Pride Parade, Pride March and Pride Parade celebration. What does that mean for other Pride celebrations across the country? We'll talk about it. Stay with me, all of that and a whole lot more on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. So many things to talk about today, but I'm very, very excited about what we got lined up for you. We wanted to start off this conversation today talking about the controversial text messages that Ginni Thomas, who is the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, the text messages that she sent to former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, who served as the Chief of Staff for President Trump, urging him and President Trump and his team to overturn the 2020 election. Folks, you heard me right. Here's the wife of the Supreme Court, of a Supreme Court justice, saying to a president and his team, you can overturn the 2020 election. Wow. I'm going to show you a little bit of what some of those text messages look like. I mean, many text messages, but we're also going to have a conversation with veteran attorney, Mr. Illegal Eagle. He's been dealing with civil rights issues for years, and we're going to have him just in a moment to join us for this part of the discussion. Mr. A. Dwight Pettit. Also, we're joined by culture crew member Bakari Jones. I want to show you just a little bit of these text messages. Just take a look at these, folks. It blows you away as to how serious this situation around the big lie has really gone. This was her text messages to the White House. It said, help this great president stand firm, Mark. You are the leader with him who is standing for America's constitutional governance at the precipice. The majority knows Biden and the left is attempting the greatest heist of our history. Check out the date, November 10th, 2020. Let's go. Let's take a look at this one. Sounds like Sydney and her team are getting inundated with evidence of fraud. Make a plan, release the Kraken, and save us from the left taking America down. She got more to say. I can't see Americans swallowing the obvious fraud, calling the election the fraud. Just going with one more thing with no freaking consequences. The whole coup and now this. We just caved to people wanting Biden to be anointed. Many of us can't continue the GOP charade. And this one that was sent in January of 2021. We are living through what feels like the end of America. Most of us are disgusted with the vice president and are in a listening mode to see where to fight with our teams. Those who attack the Capitol are not representative of our great teams of patriot for Donald J. Trump. Amazing times, the end of liberty. Did I mention that she's the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas? Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Here is the woman who is urging, and she has been a Republican operative for years, has been a supporter of Republican policy for years, folks. And that's where we are right now. I want to bring in Legal Eagle veteran attorney, Mr. A. Dwight Pettit, into this conversation, and Culture Crew member Bakari Jones, who serves as an activist and educator strategist in many communities, including the LGBTQIA community. First, Mr. Pettit, welcome to the Culture here on the Black Star Network. It's a pleasure to have you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm fine, Farajii, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Mr. Pettit, you saw these text messages. And I still can't believe that these text messages were sent from a person who's married to a Supreme Court justice, and all of this stuff is just coming out now. But what do you take from these text messages from Ginni Thomas?
Well, the thing about it, the person in issue is Clarence Thomas himself, and whether or not with certain rulings and things that he's made, whether he had a conflict of interest, and of course that is predicated about what she told him and what he knew or what he wasn't a part of. Because you got to understand, Farajii, she has a First Amendment right to express her opinion. The question is whether or not that opinion is some kind of way communicated and in fact affects the decision of Supreme Court justice. Now, I think that what this is ripe for is a hearing by Congress, just on a preliminary hearing, as to whether or not some type of impeachment is in order, because otherwise there's no statutes in terms of what this type of situation can generate. There's no code of conduct for the Supreme Court. There's no code of ethics for the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court justice is appointed for life. And so the question is that although she might have been there at the insurrection, although she says she had left before the president got there, the question whether or not her actions were in furtherance of committing a crime in terms of insurrection or treason. But that's moving it beyond your question.
Moving it well beyond, but I think that's something that we certainly consider. And folks, her name is Ginni Thomas. I was saying Gianni, so I want to apologize for mispronouncing her name. But I think what you're saying is absolutely on point, Mr. Pettit, which is that this falls flat on Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. Now, of course, by her being in the position that she's in, it's hard to and you said the Supreme Court don't have certain rules because this has never happened. So this is really setting the precedent for this. But what could potentially be the consequences? Because there aren't any conflict of interest policy for Supreme Court justices as well. Is that correct?
Right. It's no rules of conflict. It's no rules of that restricts anything in terms of what a Supreme Court justice can do or not do. The major issue is her conflict of interest statements and whether or not she communicated those to Clarence and whether or not his decisions might have been affected by her communications. Now, here's a very interesting thing. She says in one of the quotes, as I understand it, that when talking to Mark Meadows, she is going to have a conversation with her best friend. Now, he has indicated before that that's how they communicate to each other. They have a code name to each other, my best friend. And so it would be very interesting if they have a hearing as to who she's referring to when she tells Mark Meadows after a conversation or text conversation with him that she's going to have this conversation with her best friend, and her best friend could be Clarence Thomas. And then you've got to remember also, in a legal context, Trump was trying to get his papers from January 6th suppressed, and it went to the Supreme Court, and all Supreme Court justices voted against him except Clarence Thomas. So you really have to, I think you need a hearing there to see who she's talking about in terms of her best friend, whether she communicated those thoughts that she had in terms of the insurrection and so forth to him, and maybe was his vote predicated denying Trump his motion to, in fact, suppress those documents, the discovery for the January 6th committee, whether her conversations with her best friend could have, in fact, affected his decision. Now, when you say what the consequences are, the consequences right now, from what we know, he should recuse himself from anything involving January 6th and the insurrection and the investigation in terms of Ginni Thomas that's ongoing right now.
So, and I mean, the way you just broke it down, Mr. Pettit, it just sounds like it's one of those, you know, like the term she used, best friend. It's like I'll rub your back, you rub mine. It's all of this kind of like backdoor dealing. But I think the essential point of all of this level of communication is that, one, Donald Trump knew that there was already talk and plans that they were going to put out the big lie about the 2020 election, and it could be added to the fact of what happened on January the 6th. Even though Ginni Thomas put in that last text message from January, from the early part of January, saying that those who attacked the Capitol are not our representatives, they are not true patriots, but it's hard to believe that, considering all of the other communication that she sent, and considering everything else that has happened around January the 6th. So I know that if she was to be questioned about that, she could say, "Well, I denied that," and I'm wondering, will that really hold any weight in court or under any legal proceeding?
Well, I think the thing is, Farajii, she was there, as I understand it, at the insurrection of January 6th. Not only the communications that she made with Mark Meadows, but the fact that she was a participant by her own admission until she claims that she left. Well, I think the question has got to be, in my opinion, did she do anything in furtherance of the criminal activity? And that was, in fact, criminal activity that day, because that was, in my opinion, bordered on treason to overthrow the election results, which was a Democratic part of the Democratic Party's procedure for the presidency, which was lawful and necessary for what was supposed to happen on January 6th. So the question becomes, was she a participant? Was she, in fact, making decisions, helping Mark Meadows to aid and abet the insurrection and, in my opinion, the treasonous activity? And what did she tell her best friend? Who was her best friend? And did her best friend, who I'm assuming is Thomas, act in terms of his responsibilities to the court and the Constitution, act in terms of furtherance of his opinions and beliefs, or did he act in terms of what his wife suggested, which to me would be a clear conflict of interest, and would warrant, if that's the case, it seems to me he would warrant impeachment.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I want to bring in Cultured Crew member Bakari Jones into this conversation. Bakari, listening to Mr. A. Dwight Pettit on this issue, what's going through your head?
I'm following right along, Farajii. My immediate thought was, is it close enough to call this a conflict of interest? And my immediate thought was, the fact that Justice Thomas was the only dissenting vote in that decision to release the documents that former President Trump wanted to keep suppressed. So that to me, it literally sticks out like a sore thumb. So I'm of the mindset and hoping that that is enough to prove that it's a conflict of interest. And I understand what Brother Pettit is saying in terms of having to be able to ultimately just have those facts line up. I think my next thought, which where I was going, which is where Brother Pettit led us, was, is that enough to impeach him? And then I guess the follow-up question that I have is, I've not witnessed an attempt to impeach a justice, but I'm just curious about the timeline and whether or not that's something that's a possibility, in terms of where we are.
Yeah.
Just chronologically speaking, do we have enough time? I know, my understanding is that we would need two-thirds of the Senate would have to vote to convict Justice Thomas. So votes aside, just chronologically speaking, is there enough of a runway, enough of a timeline to actually be able to make that happen? Or is it another distraction from a lot of other issues that we keep focusing on?
Mr. Pettit, can you speak to that, sir?
Well, I think Ms. Jones has hit it right on the head, but the timeline has to be governed by the events that are coming forth. And what the Republican Party is attempting to do is string all of this out in terms of investigations and everything else in terms of January 6th till after the midterm elections. If we don't, by way of the voters, come victorious in the upcoming midterm elections, all of these things that are being pushed and attacked by the Republican Party will be taken off the table, because the issue is going to be whether or not who controls Congress and the Senate and when the House of Representatives. So they're banking on all of these investigations and all of these committees, and particularly the January 6th Insurrection Committee, whether or not they can run out the clock and win the House or the Senate or both in the midterm elections, which are coming up. And that's why people have to understand all this, what we're seeing now, day by day, is an attempt to erode and slow down any type of legal proceedings until hopefully what they're trying to do is get control of the Congress. And then it all becomes academic.
Brother Pettit, can I ask
go ahead.
a question? Do you think that Justice Thomas's hospitalization impacts any of this, just in general, in a general sense? Do you think his hospitalization impacts anything one way or the other?
No, and unless he'd been deemed to be unavailable because of his health, I don't see how it plays in, since he's now, as I understand it, he's out of the hospital and it was just simple flu.
Right. And the impeachment of a justice, Mr. Pettit, would be the same process as the impeachment of a president. Is that correct?
That's correct, according to the Constitution.
Right. So the House of Representatives would vote on whether to impeach the justice in question. And then if the justice is impeached, there would be a Senate trial.
Right. The Senate would have to convict. And so far, Donald Trump, because of his political connections, has been able to stave off 2 impeachments and several other investigations. So the man is real slick. That's
why they call him Teflon Don.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why they call him
tragedy for this nation.
Very real tragedy. So my thinking now that we have this situation, and of course it's like we have this, and on the flip side, of course, is the confirmation of Judge Jackson. But I know that there was a poll that was recently done with Gallup, and they said that the Supreme Court has its lowest public approval rating in history, in part because it is viewed as being overly politicized. What is your view, Mr. Pettit, that can change? That the Supreme Court would be less political, and because it's just becoming more partisan, just like Congress is.
Well, you got to realize that as much as we despise Trump, or at least as I do, he was very successful in terms of his base, in terms of getting control of the Supreme Court with three appointments and blocking anything that Democrats tried to do with Attorney General Garland. And so he got control of the court. And so the only question becomes, with lifetime appointments, whether some people are going to drop off who might be of conservative persuasion to the benefit of progressives, because the president has indicated that he is not in favor of packing the court, which would be the solution in terms of going from 9 justices to 13 would give him a Democratic majority. But he indicates he's old school and he doesn't want to take that path. So, they're going to have, unless, now this was a scenario that I thought about. If Justice Thomas had really been ill, and I'm not wishing him any bad health, but if he'd really been ill and come off the court, that would have given Trump the Jackson appointment, which I think is going to go through, and would give him another progressive appointment, which would even the balance 5-4 instead of as it is now 6-3.
And see, and I want to just share some data with folks as we talk about this, because even though we're having these, like I said, this conversation about the confirmation of Judge Jackson, folks, Americans' opinions of the U.S. Supreme Court is just dwindling, it seems like, each year, 40% down from 49% in July, saying that they approve of the job the High Court is doing. This represents by 2 percentage points a new low in Gallup's trend, which dates back to the year 2000. So we're seeing a sharp decline in the approval rating of the nation's highest court just over a matter of months, from 49% to 40%. And, I also read a couple of other polls. I think it was from the Pew Research Center, Mr. Pettit and Bakari, where it was just like people's view of government institutions have declined dramatically over the past couple of years. And my concern, Mr. Pettit, is that's not a good place for this country to be, considering all of the partisan bickering, considering just where people are, in this country. If people don't trust government, they don't trust the court system, that can open up Pandora's box to chaos in a lot of ways.
Well, look, Farajii, the public watches what is happening, whether you're progressive or whether conservative. The court has been tainted over the objection of the Chief Judge Roberts, has been tainted by Trump and putting the court in a political sphere. And that's exactly what he did in terms of the separation and the Republicans and the Democrats in the Senate. There was no reason to block the appointment of Obama in terms of Garland. They made that political when they, in fact, blocked it for no reason whatsoever. And then Trump made the 3 appointments. So, the public sees that, and the public understands that there's been a political revolution, and the court has, in fact, been politicized or politicalized. Now, what Judge, I want to call her Justice, what Judge Jackson was saying, if you watch the hearing, she kept going back to a process called stare decisis. And she defined that explicitly. And stare decisis means what the court should be doing is looking at its past history in terms of rulings on abortion, rulings on other controversial issues, and should follow its own precedent. But this court is really suspect of, in fact, going against that principle when it comes to affirmative action, when it comes to abortion, when it comes to migration, all of these major issues. This court is so conservative and so politicized that it is going to try to reverse what we consider to be established law.
And Mr. Pettit, where do Black people fit into all of this, right? I mean, you are a civil rights attorney. You've been speaking on everything from voting rights to other big ticket items or big ticket issues affecting the Black community in this country for years. now that we're at this point where voting rights is still up in the air, you know, with the policing, George Floyd Policing Act not being passed. Now we got this madness happening in the court. Let's not even talk about the partisan bickering that's currently placed in Congress. And then there's still the expectation that Black folks in particular, but Black and brown and marginalized communities in this country stay hopeful. Where does that put us?
Well, it puts us in a very dangerous situation, Farajii. We are the victims of this conservative revolution, and we are the ones that white supremacists have targeted. This is no surprise in terms of the coming of Trump to be able to rally that sore phenomena in this country and bring it to a political head, which he has done. And so, you know, we look at, for example, coming up to the court, affirmative action is getting ready to be revisited. And the court is going to knock out affirmative action. And I don't need to tell you what the case is, this Harvard case coming up in terms of admission of people of color. They're going to revisit, as I said before, the abortion laws. But in terms of Black folk, you know, anything that is of interest to Black people. Let's talk about crime, for example, since you mentioned the crime bill. They already told us that qualified immunity is good law. Well, you know, RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, told us that was a circus because qualified immunity was nothing more than an excuse for the police to claim no knowledge, in fact, when they kill somebody. The defense was lack of knowledge of the law. And so when you start looking at qualified immunity and affirmative action and all of these things, and abortion and everything that will affect Black folk, but particularly affirmative action, particularly the criminal codes and so forth, that will have an impact. We are the target and the recipients of the negative conclusions of this court. No question about it.
And what is the course of action that we can take to get justice, given those challenges?
Well, you know, we have to understand, Farajii, that we have the power of the vote. And that's what we exercised in this past election to get Donald Trump out. And we still have to pressure the vote in terms of pushing forth the vote to Biden to make him do right by the Justice Reform Act, to make him do right about the John Lewis voting bill. We have to give him the political power behind him to make him do. It's not that he doesn't want to do the right thing, but he understands that he's playing politics in terms of things that the Black community put him in office to, in fact, rectify. And now that he's there, we've got to call in that card politically and say, Mr. President, these are the things that we need to enhance and protect the Black community. And that's why you were here. That's how you were put in by Black folk, and we demand that you deliver. Otherwise, we are in a big, big trouble, Farajii, scary trouble. Because if they take control in terms of midterm elections and take control of the White House, and the right wing is in control of this country, pursuant to people like Trump, then we might as well pack up and decide where we got to go.
Might as well pack up and decide where we're going to go. And that's coming from a man, folks, who has been doing civil rights work for years, who has seen it, the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of policy and law in this country. Mr. Petty, I appreciate your time, sir. I really do. And we appreciate you just sharing that insight and analysis, even though it might be a hard pill for some of us to swallow. But I appreciate you just keeping it 100 with us, Mr. Petty. So thank you.
Thanks, Farajii. And the burden is on us. Simple as that. We got to protect ourselves. Let me just say one thing.
Sure.
When Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965, he said something very, very, very meaningful. He said, I've signed this, and I think he used the word Negro. You Negroes, I've signed this, and now what you do with it is up to you.
You Negroes are signing, and what you do is up to you.
Exactly. Martin Luther King
This
sitting right there.
That's what I was thinking, because this got to be that same conversation. So you got to make me do it.
Mm-hmm.
That Dr. King had with Mr. Johnson at that time.
So, give me the power, give me the political power to do this. And he did. And then he turned to the Black community and said, now it's up to you. And we moved, across the country by the election of Obama and the election of Black officials, Black congressmen, Black sheriffs, and what have you. And in my opinion, that's what gave the rise of Donald Trump, because he was able to look at the right-wing supremacists and said, hey, they're taking over the country. And that's what stimulated this whole thing. He said, I've given you all this in terms of Trump, in terms of the right wing, but now nobody told you to go out and elect a Black president. And so that's what all hell burst out. And
man,
burst loose.
Oh, man. Jeez. Mr. Pettit, again, we thank you so much for your time. You have a book out that's been considered to be a legal classic, Under Color of Law, where you talk about your personal story, but also talking about civil rights constitutional cases and decisions that have been made that you were a part of. And so we thank you so much for your wisdom and your analysis on today. And we certainly look forward to bringing you back on, Mr. Pettit.
Thanks, Farajii, and thanks, Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too. Man, oh man, folks, we look, let me just say, I'm going to take a quick breath right here. I got to take a moment, Bakari, because when you have, and again, I'm not even trying to, make this up, Bakari, Mr. Pettit has been out, he has his legal firm, his law firm here in Baltimore. But when he says, hey, if they get him into office, we might as well pack it up.
Yeah.
And he has seen how civil rights have gone in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're on the precipice of possibly losing again. Big cases, big decisions, right?
Yep.
We're on the precipice of losing big policy. All I can say is we got to figure out a path to do something for ourselves politically, legally, because right now, it doesn't look good for our people, Bakari.
Yeah, it definitely needs to be a more streamlined, a more coherent strategy. I think that, what this just reminds us, the fact that he was, able to break down the stretching out, right? Like so much of this litigation, it's a strategy and it's one that's working, so the question for me is what has to change? How do we pivot to be more on the offense in this same situation? So, and he's right. And there's not a lot of time between now and the midterm. So
I hope folks understand that, and I'm looking up some information here, but I hope folks really understand that as powerful as the vote is, there has to be more done. I hope folks really understand that there's going to have to be an organized effort to bring people together to put that fire to the President Biden, to this administration, the same way that you saw with Lyndon Baines Johnson, and he's saying, well, you're going to have to make me, and you're going to have to get. We are in that same moment, literally, like we're in that same moment that we cannot expect for there to be any type of change politically, socially, legally, whatever. There can't be no change unless we are organized to facilitate that change.
Yeah.
And putting a demand on this administration without organization gives us nothing. It leaves us with nothing. It just leaves us with demands on a piece of paper that can be thrown in the trash. We need to be organized. We need to have some things in place. And I hope that between now and November, Bakari, that we at least have some strategies in place, because we may this time period that we're in now, it might be too short for some things to happen. But
Right.
We do have a presidential election coming up in 2024.
Yes, we do.
And the country can feel the presence of the pain that Black people have in being disregarded, neglected, and once again, being our interests being put on the back burners. We got enough time to make that statement. We got enough time. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, speaking of legalities, let's talk about what happened this week. The big history-making moment of the Supreme Court nominations for Judge Ketanji Jackson. We're going to do just a brief recap of what happened, but then just discuss it, what we can expect over these next couple of weeks as both the Senate and the Congress are moving forward on this confirmation and the big development that may put this confirmation right in the bag for Judge Ketanji Jackson. So stay with us. That conversation is coming up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back. Let's talk about the Supreme Court nomination confirmation hearings that happened earlier all throughout this week of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. First, let me just do this. Bakari, I think we can do this, ma'am.
Definitely.
Because
That's all.
4 days of that madness.
Yep.
Let me just say 4 days of that madness. And it's crazy because it looked like a circus more than a Supreme Court confirmation hearing. You know, you would expect there to be more professionalism, more respect, more class, more facts. Instead, it became this, I don't know what the hell that thing was, but
very nasty.
You know, to Judge Jackson, thank you for keeping your composure. You kept your composure throughout. And I know that had to be a hard task to do with some of the questions and allegations and just some of the thoughts that were coming from the other side. I mean, it made, honestly, Bakari, it made Congress look silly. And it's, you know, it's like going back to that old saying, one bad apple can ruin the bunch. Lindsey Graham, who you seeing right there, and that joker, Ted Cruz. Josh Hawley. I mean, it's sad. I think the chairman, Senator Dick Durbin, he said he was saddened. He was saddened by what he saw taking place throughout the week, and just saw the display. And the funny part about it is that the book that Ted Cruz was trying to go back and forth on.
Oh man,
the anti-racism book. The one, look at this, Mr. Slides just looking crazy, I mean, he looked absolutely silly. And the thing is that the books that he pointed out, everybody wants to buy them now.
Bestsellers now, just like that, just like that,
bro, just like that. So I mean, in one respect, you like, oh man, he really put it on him. But then in another respect, you're like, boy, did he look silly? Let me just tell you, folks, according to CNN, they put out a poll. They found that a majority of Americans support Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson being confirmed to the Supreme Court, with 58% saying the Senate should vote in favor of her historical nomination to the nation's highest court. And that was according to, now I said a poll according to CNN, excuse me, it was a poll according to Gallup. 58% voted in favor, Bakari, that this Black woman should sit on the Supreme Court. Look, you're not going to get 100% in America, so take that 58% and run with it.
It's not the 58 I'm concerned about, Farajii. It's the 40.
Oh, it's the 42 you concerned.
It's the 40. You know, I wasn't able to watch all of the hearings this week, but the pieces that I was able to catch, it was disgusting. I think it's fair to say. I think for folks that are on Twitter, they agree. You know, the overwhelming sentiment of Black women or anyone that has been the only Black person in their workspaces and professional spaces sympathize with her, because they understood exactly what it felt like to be berated and for someone to attempt to humiliate you for hours on end. So on one level, it's exhausting, you know, but the thing that comes up for me is, you know, we got to peel back the layers and try to figure out the why they're taking this approach, right? And my understanding, and I'm still, you know, piecing together so many different things, but my understanding is that, you know, taking the angle of Judge Jackson having these lenient sentences related to child pornography cases, and honestly, just their displays during the hearings was not necessarily about the fact that they believed what they were saying, but that they believed that their supporters would believe what they were saying. And so that, for me, you know, just to bring it back, that's why I'm concerned about the 42%. And does that 42% of Americans who don't support her confirmation, again, just what we just talked about with Brother Pettit, are they moved and mobilized in a way that puts them, again, just ahead of us strategically, right? The 58, you know, people say we're preaching to the choir. Are they going to have that same fire, you know, under them? Are they going to be as equally passionate in terms of calling their respective representatives to be able to put pressure to vote in favor of that confirmation? So that's, for me, you know, why I'm more concerned about the 42%.
Very concerned. Here's the other part about it. and you know, because the Congress is pretty much evenly split with Republicans and Democrats, every vote counts.
Literally.
So when West Virginia Democrat, who I always question whether he's a Democrat or Republican, but West Virginia Democrat Senator Joe Manchin has gone on to announce today that he would be voting for her to be confirmed to be on the Supreme Court. He put out a statement saying, quote, "I met with Judge Jackson and evaluated her qualifications to be a Supreme Court justice. After meeting with her, considering her record, and closely monitoring her testimony and questioning before the Senate Judiciary Committee this week, I have determined I intend to vote for her nomination to serve on the Supreme Court." So by him saying yes, pretty much people are saying that it is ensured that she is going to be the next Supreme Court justice, because all of the Democrats just need to vote. He's going to vote. And then, of course, with Vice President Kamala Harris voting, is pretty much a shoo-in that she's going to vote. Plus, with that 58, nearly 60% of the American people saying, "Go ahead, let's move forward with her." I don't see any pushback.
Listen, I'm looking at the numbers from the Washington Post, and even with Manchin, the most recent number is 43 in favor, 11 opposing, and 46 unknown.
Yeah.
Of that 46 that are unknown, 6 of those folks are Democrats. But even with the 43 that are in favor, 6, if we assume that the last 6 Democrats also vote in favor, that puts us at 49. So yeah. Is there another Democrat? Is there one that's going to vote in favor? Because that's, and really too, that's going to be the tipping point. So I am trying to send Sister Jackson as much positive energy as possible. I'm hoping that is the case, but I feel like I think we're going to have to wait and see. I think, because the conversation that we had a few weeks ago, you, myself, and Shaquaya, right? We felt wildly different. We felt like this was going to be. We didn't think that the hearings themselves would necessarily be a walk in the park, but we thought statistically, numerically speaking, that this was going to be a given. And so of course the Washington Post, maybe they're drawing it out a little bit more in terms of, how quickly they're updating some of those numbers and those stats. But like I said, there's 46 senators now who are in that unknown category, and only 6 of them are Democrats. So to me, I think we kind of have to wait. I think we kind of got to wait and see.
We do have to wait and see. And the good part about this, and people are checking in on our YouTube page and Facebook page. And let me make sure I want to share with just a couple of people saying, CW said, "Cruz no better. Look how he got to America across the border illegal." So people are going in on Cruz. Taylor said that whole thing was the things nightmares are made of. Shameful. What folks are saying that it, even though Joe Manchin has said today that he would support her, we know that he has changed his mind before on big ticket issues like this one. So we got to just watch him. Zeta Jones said, "Hey, let me be specific. Who cares about Manchin?" I agree. But it's unfortunate that sometimes big decisions rest on the shoulders of one person. Mm-hmm. And in this case, it may be Manchin, it may not. It could have been Sinema. I don't know. But, you got to take every vote. You got to take every vote. Joy Net LG said Joe Manchin has changed his mind before. Yeah. And John Crute said, "I hope Ketanji Brown Jackson gets confirmed." I think a lot of us are feeling the same way. Mm-hmm. And we are in a space right now where we need change. We need representation. We need change. Look, I'm just making sure that we put some things in place at this point, Bakari, that's going to lead to us winning something. Because right now, if Black people were to look at the scorecard in this country, we're like, what, 0-4?
100. Man.
And I mean, look, it seems like we've gotten more wins when there were more racial challenges.
Yeah. Right, the unification though, right? And so much of this, Farajii, we know is by design. So I think everything we've been talking about, all of it points to us being more streamlined and more organized. So,
and that's the thing. And I hope, Bakari, you and I, we understand the power, the importance, the value of being organized and having strategic, some strategic plans. And I hope, folks, that as you're listening to us today, I'm telling you, I am one that is a huge advocate of being organized. We cannot win disorganized. And I'm not talking about the full millions of Black people in this country. I'm just talking about a few. I'm just talking about like a handful, even if it's less than 100. You can get the ball rolling, but we do need to be organized. We got to put all our egos and all of our personal differences to the side, because we're at a point in this country, and I'm going to talk about this later for my last word. We're at a very historic point, but history can serve in two capacities. It can guide and teach us, or it can warn us. I'm going to talk about that in my last word, but we got to be organized, man. And we got to be prepared. Like all this stuff that we're seeing right now, Bakari, whether it's with, yes, we're most likely, and I hope that Judge Jackson gets confirmed, but look at all of the other stuff that we got to get through for the rest of the year, not thinking about the election, because we haven't gotten to a real heavy election talk right now. But once over the next couple of months, we will. We still got pieces of legislation sitting on the tables and desks and that haven't been addressed. So we still got a lot of work to get through. And this is only the third year of the Biden-Harris administration. All right, so I'm going to just leave that right there. We're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to switch gears and have another conversation with Dr. Lamar Shields, who is an educator and author. He is the founder of the Cambio Group. He's going to talk to us about what states are doing as there is a movement against anti-CRT. He's going to give us his analysis about this movement that is growing to 35 states. Yeah, folks, we'll have that conversation up next. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome to the second hour of the show. Phenomenal first hour talking about the Ginni Thomas text messages. This is the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, and those damning text messages to show that she was a part of the planning of the big lie around the 2020 election. So we will continue to keep our eyes posted on that situation. And of course, just giving a brief recap of a history-making week for the Supreme Court confirmation hearings of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. So got a little bit more conversation into that. But I truly believe things are going to, in regards to the hearings, we're going to have more conversations. It was a crazy, crazy week. But that doesn't stop other things from being discussed. So now we wanted to shift gears to move into the educational space, as there are a number of states across this country, folks, 35 since 2020, that have signed into law or proposed legislation that will ban or restrict the teaching of critical race theory or racism in the classroom. 35 states. Now, critical race theory simply is a look at how racism, white supremacy, has molded every part of American society, such as everything from public policy and institutions such as the justice system, and just discussing it in detail in a way that it is appropriate for various ages about white supremacy and the poison of white supremacy. Here to give us some insight into this conversation is a good friend of mine, Dr. Lamar Shields, who is an author, he is an activist, he's an educator and founder of the Cambio Group, and he's going to just give us some insight and his analysis of this anti-CRT movement that's happening in America right now. Dr. Shields.
What's up, brother Farajii in the building? Can you hear me, man?
I can hear you loud and clear, big brother. How you feeling?
Look at my brother, looking all handsome. Got the fresh do for 2022. My brother Farajii, I just wanted to say congratulations to you. I don't know anybody more deserving. For those that don't know, I've been watching this brother grow from high school to college to shutting down, doing conferences, speaking all over the country, getting all handsome now, got kids, got a family. But I love you, brother. I am so proud of you. You are doing what's supposed to happen. You started young. Your dad and all these other people surrounded strong black men and women around you, and you should be benefited. Shout out to my homeboy who lived in Chicago, Roland Martin, who I got a chance to hang out with as well. He did the right thing by bringing you on. So I could not come into the space. First of all, let me say, what the hell took you so long to bring me on the show? That's what I want to say. With your family. I saw Bakari in the building. Shout out to Bakari. This is a family, because as you were engaging in the conversation with Bakari, I was like, Bakari was a part of the Shortcut Show, our live storytelling show that actually is going on at the Reginald F. Lewis Museum tomorrow. And so to see Bakari, to see you, to see the younger generation, Negro, you ain't that young, but I'm just giving you
stop it.
Do the work. It's a big deal, man. And to see you grow and mature, and for Baltimore to embrace you, it is a blessing, man. So I could not come on and say I am so proud of you. For folks that don't know you, you are ours. Even though I'm from Chicago, I embrace the city, and so we have very similar roots to how we grew up and our beliefs. So I cannot say I'm more proud of a brother who's benefiting from doing the work, not only doing the work, Farajii, but doing the work on yourself, man. And so I just thank you for allowing me to be, as the old gospel song says, to be in that number, brother. I'm proud to be hanging out with you, man. And you're looking great, man.
Oh, brother, you know, self-expression. Hey, brother, we growing and evolving and changing, and you know what I mean? But I really appreciate that, brother Lamar. I really appreciate that. I appreciate that. I really do. So thank you so much. I'm always happy to extend a platform to you, brother, because you have been doing work in a lot of different spaces. You've been a classroom teacher, and I always tell people, when it comes to being an educator, you actually taught in the classroom.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and I know some people like, no, I educate people. I understand that. But I'm saying when you have worked in a school district, a system, and you get to see from the inside exactly some of the challenges that are facing our people, whether it's from as a student or as an educator, you know, and then you've also been in a space where you are a national teachers trainer, where you have gone to everywhere from the East Coast to the West Coast, and even outside of the boundaries of the United States, to teach teachers on how to become better educators, especially to Black boys and girls.
Yes.
So when we look at this situation, and I know that you've been, you know, having these conversations about critical race theory, but to see that there is a growing resentment and resistance against the idea of teaching about racism and just basic history. And I mean, this is history from 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and it's becoming a problem in 2022. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, man, I thank you for that introduction, man. I am in probably 100 schools a year, either virtually, and now I'm putting my foot in the building. So thank you for the technology and Zoom. I haven't been in a lot of the buildings as much. But man, Farajii, we are this critical race theory, or just the theory, just being Black is under attack. Let me just start right there. Being a Black or brown person and unapologetically who you are. Some days I'll show up in a dashiki. Some days I'll show up in some jeans with some Timbs. Some days I'll show up, in a suit. But Blackness is under attack, man. As you said, I pivoted from the classroom, taught from elementary all the way to college, from high school, then to college, taught at Johns Hopkins, went to the great Grambling State University. I was a political science major, but I've always loved education. Education comes from a Latin word, educare, which means to pull out. And what's happening in the world, we're pushing stuff in. We're pushing. And education is about pulling out. However, CRT is a way of pulling out, or CRT is a way of understanding how American racism has shaped public policy. That's what it is. I'm in 100 schools, Farajii. I'm in many of the schools district that you're talking about, which I will not name. Some of them are under attack, and we are under attack for our work. But the challenge is that white folks are discovering that and we've known this historically from studying Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, white folks are the minority on this planet, and it is making them nervous. So when you talk about CRT, it is a way of understanding how a system has shaped public policy. And what I've discovered when I'm walking into buildings, I've yet to see people who's actually teaching this theory, which is an academic concept that came out before Farajii, you and I on this planet, who the core idea is a social. We know that race is a social construct, and that racism is merely the product of some other nonsense. But the people that created, who I have a lot of respect to, Derek Bell, Kimberly Crenshaw, and Richard Delgado. I use Kimberly Crenshaw's work, which is this intersectionality that she created as a legal scholar. So we're talking about legal scholars, where she coined this term, and I want to say in 1989, to describe how systems of oppression overlap to create distinct experiences for people with multiple identities. What she discovered is, she says that Black women and white women are discriminated against, but women of color are discriminated against at a higher level. So when we talk about critical race theory, we are telling the history. We are telling the authentic and true history. If it doesn't mean anything to white folks, then why are they attacking Ketanji Brown Jackson, or Judge or Chief or Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson? Why are these senators pulling out these books and having like this is reading Rainbow, like they're LeVar Burton and reading some stuff? And this is you're not LeVar Burton. That's why you need that Black person behind. Like, listen, Negro, you need to really talk to me, because we don't need you to read some books to us to describe how great Black people are. And that's what it is. Whenever we are talking about how great we are, other people have an issue with it. But what we do need, Farajii, is we do need a framework. And what this does is critical race theory, like other theories, it is a framework and a perspective. My theory of my work is, it's on my license plate. I wear the shirt. I was introduced to this concept by Bishop Desmond Tutu, Nelson Mandela, and the funny man Trevor Noah. It's called Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a framework that simply says, I am because we are connected. So when I go into these school districts, I'll name the state of Mississippi, and they put a microphone in my face, and I had to go to the superintendent to be very clear. I am speaking for myself, not the superintendent, and I'm speaking for my company, the Cambio Group, which means change in Spanish, to say that we need to look at this and we need to understand history because our history is under attack. I remember KRS-One and Chuck D said it years ago. He said, our generation, our grandkids, they're going to look at hip hop, Farajii, and say, white folks created hip hop music? Just like this funny cartoon that was out of this little girl who was with her grandfather, and he took her to a building, and the little girl, Farajii, said, and you went in there to go to school? Because in her mind, school is now online. In her mind, school is electronic. And so critical race theory is not a synonym for culturally relevant teaching. Let me, as we say in Spanish, más despacio, let me say it again. Critical race theory is not a synonym for culturally relevant teacher, which is something that many teachers support. Culturally relevant teaching says to me is that you're working with Black and brown kids, so you need to understand where they've come from. You need to walk in their shoes. You need to understand the culture, the big C and the small c of what it actually means. So then why do we need it? Because we need a framework. However, I'm discovering many teachers are not, and you know, I'm pro-Black. I love African history, Latin history, African culture, but I'm not teaching critical race theory. I'm teaching my children, Black and brown children, to be unapologetically who they are and where they come from. And if you have a problem with that, then you need to get the hell out the way, because our kids need to understand how great they are. If we look at history, if our history in this country starts with racism, it starts with slavery and ends with slavery, what are you telling Black and brown boys?
Come on.
What are you telling them about their history? That our history is bigger than this. That's why I love the book, The 1619 Project. And see what's happening with these white folks who are attacking Justice Brown, what they're doing, Farajii, and it is not working. They are trying to pull out all the Black scholars and then say to this sister, well, I know you've read the book, The 1619 Project, Nicole Hannah-Jones. I know you've hung out with this person. And the sister's like, yeah, I know those people. Yeah, I've read those books. But if you look at my record, am I pulling those things out in my record? And so it's important to be unapologetic who we are so they know up front. And I love when she came out, she said, the very first thing she said, Farajii, yep, my uncle was incarcerated. Yep, he done been in jail. Yep, and so and so. So you can't use that against me. And so watching her play this game of Aikido, and then watching my brother from New Jersey, Cory Booker, who I met when he was a mayor, and said, ain't nobody gonna steal my joy. That's what we need. We need that right there. So what does any of this have to do with education? Scholars who study critical race theory in education look at how policies and practices, Farajii, affect our children, because there are policies and practices that are in place that are destroying our children. Now, the work that I do is centered around equity. I come in and we're looking at policies, but before we get to policies, Farajii, we're looking at the practices in the classroom. How are you engaging young people? Not just the policies of the school system. How are you engaging young people? How are you talking to them? How are you greeting young people? And so we've been very successful in our organization. My partner Marina is white, and I'm a person of color, and we come in and we hit them from all angles. And what I love about her, she says this to me. She says, Dr. Shields, when I'm the minority in the room, I'm gonna let you speak more. But when I'm the majority in the room, I'm gonna speak up, because we understand. She's speaking to the white women because she was a white woman who taught in a Black system. And she says, let me humble myself and be quiet and hear what these other people have to say. And so, yes, these states are under attack, but we're coming in through a different way. And that's why I told you, Farajii, when you called me, I got to be real mindful of how I approach the conversation, because it's not that I'm afraid that they're going to pull me out, because I'm speaking truth, what I'm saying, and I'm backing it up with data and research. So when you back it up with data and research, like our sister is, who's sitting there being berated by these white men who would not talk to a white man the same way, that if that was a Black man there, they would not attack him. They would attack him, but in a different manner. And so I'm for anything that's celebrating the greatness of anybody, but I'm against anything that's disrespecting any other culture. And this framework is not disrespecting any other culture. It is backing it up with research and data to support it.
That is right on time. I want to bring in Bakari Jones, culture crew member, as part of this conversation as we talk to Dr. Lamar Shields there. Bakari, I mean, Dr. Lamar Shields really Brother Lamar just laid it out in terms of just talking about this movement. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I'm always concerned with is the fact that as much as there is this attack, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's with the curricula, that we make sure that same fire that you got, Brother Lamar, is felt by parents. It's felt by community members, because when children get out of school, they come home. When they leave the house, they hang out in the community. And if the parents and other community members aren't on the same page as revolutionary and progressive and thought-provoking educators like yourself and others within the school systems across this country, then the message gets lost, because they're going to come home and it's not going to be reinforced. Bakari, what's your take on that?
First, I just got to say hey to Dr. Shields. It's good to
see you.
Good to
see you. Last time you went flew up the stage for us and did
man. Thank you.
You never know who you're going to have on the show, Bakari. You never know who we're going to be booked on the call. That's all I'm going to let y'all know.
Reunited, just like that. So this is interesting to me. Okay, so during the storyteller series that I participated in with Dr. Shields, we had what I consider in the category of like wraparound services. So we had somebody in the back helping us with posture and yoga poses to make sure we were breathing deeply to be able to perform this story. We had coaches that were getting us, in the right mindset, working on all those things. And it was a week before last, Farajii, we talked about the Don't Say Gay bill and kind of the need for these wraparound services in the classroom when we're talking to young people to address the discomfort. And I use the word discomfort because that's my understanding of what the governors that have been able to oppose critical race theory, that's the word that they've used, right? They are opposing it on the grounds of discomfort. So my question for Dr. Shields is somebody that's been in and around the classroom, what would those services look like to be able to support Black students and to support non-Black students in having these uncomfortable conversations? That's the way that it's framed. So what does that look like to you from a, proactive standpoint in terms of reframing it?
Well, and I thank you for bringing up the Shortcut Show. We have one tomorrow that I'll probably get a chance to talk about later on. You talk about the power story. I want to talk about that. Story is so powerful. Story, and I know Farajii is going to talk about the young brother who's writing the books and stuff. Story, Bakari, gives us an opportunity to learn from one another's experience, and it can shape, strengthen, or challenge our opinions and values. Our story, when a story catches our attention, it engages us. We absorb this message and this meaning. And so with my work, our approach, because we're dealing with a lot of teachers, and there's a three-pronged approach to this work that I'm doing around. It's called coaching for equity. One is that we're engaging strategies. We're helping teachers learn new strategies to compassionately interrupt inequities, to passionately. And when I say compassionately, because people can beat themselves up. They feel that they are a part of the problem. And I always say, what are you willing to invest and divest? Secondly, we're helping people to identify ways to explore and shift their beliefs in a coaching conversation. Thirdly, the goal is to help them to deepen their will and commitment to interrupt these inequities and build their resilience to do so. So if I can get you to interrupt those things when people are called, or they're othering people, if I can get you to interrupt. But what happens, Bakari, is that people feel that you're asking them to give something up. So when you talk about this conversation of critical race theory, or the conversation that we have around equity, which is another word that they're starting to pull out, people are concerned that you're going to ask them to give something up. The issue is it's not bad that you're going to give anything up. I learned this when we had a lawyer, Dwight Pettit, that came on WAA years ago, Farajii. He said, I vote for people that's going to protect my sugar honey iced tea. And it didn't make sense at the time, but we vote for people that's going to protect our stuff. But we don't want anybody to take anything away from us. And so when you look at that equity image of the three young men on boxes, one kid is on a box, the other kid in 2 boxes and 3 boxes, and then we shift to 1 box, and then that parent says, Bakari, well, why did you take the box from my son? Well, your son can see over the fence. He didn't need the box. So then the parent says, don't tell me what my kid needs. So then I say, well, let's not talk about need. Let's talk about fit, and let's remove the barrier, that fence. And so again, what are the barriers that's getting in the way of the success of children? Equity is not about fairness. That's equality. It's about giving kids what they need to survive. And so when you talked about the Shortcut show, you mentioned it. You had a coach. You had a coach that helped you shape your story, who didn't have to walk your shoes, but help you shape your story. You had someone that's culturally connected to you, who understood the culture that you came from, the big C, not the little c, or the big C and the little c. And then you had somebody to help you breathe through that process. And so when we're having these conversations about equity or inequity, it's not always about race. It could be about gender. It could be about neighborhoods. It could be about how we engage one another. I listened to this woman who gave a TED talk about how she was berated because she would, black folks, we say, instead of saying ass, she says axe. We said axe. I grew up in Chicago. We used to do the same thing. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You done said, right? Was like, Lamar, you're not going to kill me with the axe. I was like, dude, actually, that's what we want to do. But again, let's tell the story, Bakari, about how that was a trigger. That we heard somebody say that, but there was a language in her neighborhood in Harlem that was supported. But she had to learn how to switch her gears. And so my work, and I'm glad you asked the question, is I want to help people to deepen their will and commitment to interrupt it in a compassionate way, because we do beat ourselves up. I know some dope white folks that are doing some great work, but I also know some black folks who are struggling, who look like our kids, but still can't identify because they come from a different world. And so again, this is a way to elevate the greatness of our children. And what better way to say it? I mean, to try to discredit one of the books that I love, the 1619 Project, this new origin story about what happened when the first Africans, not slaves, the first Africans came here, and the consequences of slavery and what it did. And you read just an excerpt, and you're going to discredit these researchers. And so again, you have this senator who's going to try to divide two sisters who are dope as hell. You think she's going to throw her sister under the bus? Because in the end, we still got to come back to our communities. We still got to come back to our communities and then support one another. So I love how she's playing that to say, no, you're not about to let me. But I'm sure that the people that they're trying to throw under the bus with her, they already know. We know you ain't got to speak highly of us, sister. We know what you need to do to maintain it, because once you get up in there, then we got your back.
And you know what? That's the place we got to be, Brother Lamar. And that's why when we see like Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, and you see like very high profile political leaders who are taking a hard stance about this, I mean, it makes the climb even harder. What do you recommend, or how should we move forward in combating that?
Well, I got to say, I am in that state. Like every state that you bring it up, we are there. We're at the point, Farajii, where they don't even want us to say the word equity, that there are people who come to the board meeting who are fighting against that. You got the don't say gay piece. You can't say equity. They're trying to take out the word discipline. Our approach is we have to work with educators, and we have to provide them with the tools. The research says we got to provide the educators with the tool. There are going to be some dissenters. There are going to be some people who don't want this work. That's just the reality. But our approach is we come in and work with a small group. We call them an equity team, and we spend our time with them. And what we're discovering, Farajii, that this small group of people, they may be at a high school where there's about 70 teachers, but we work with like 10 or 15, and many of them are dealing with their own personal stuff that's starting to manifest. And so I think those soft touches with those individuals, yeah, you got the state level, but you also have the superintendent level, but then you got a principal who says, this is important. There's a school that we're working with, and I came in there and they had the word Ubuntu when you walk through the door. And he says, man, I'm starting to hear this word more and more. So I'm saying you do have to engage teachers. You do have to engage in these small conversations, but you have to have conversations like you're talking about, because people don't really know. When I work with these educators and I talk about equity versus equality, they think it's the same thing because of the prefix of the word, the EQ, EQU. They're two different words. Dr. King, all these other civil rights activists, they were fighting for equality, not equity. It's a difference. I tell people this: equity starts in your home, Farajii. You have 2 kids.
Right.
You got 2 different diets, right? They eat 2 different foods. Like one kid eats this, one kid eats that, and he says, "Dad, why can't I have that?" And then you say, "Because this is for your sister." And then he says, "That's not fair." It's not about fair. It's about giving a group of people what they need to be successful in those environments. But Kari, who came to the Shortcut show, she noticed that each person had a different coach, and each person needed something to support them. And that's what this is about. It is not being, it's like being a, I'd rather be a Sherpa in this business. A Sherpa is a guide. Most of us want to say I did it, but a Sherpa is a guide where we're guiding people along through these processes and helping them support it. It ain't easy, but it's in the end, it's some great work. And I'm stretching myself, man. I'm being pushed working with children in St. Louis who have issues around special needs. So you're talking about racism, but then you got a kid who has special needs. And so then that's a whole different issue. So then you got a black kid, then you got a queer kid who's dealing with his or her sexuality. Then you have a kid so all of these different things affect black people in a different way. But Bakari knows this. You've been affected in a different way than other people. I told my daughter, it's hard being a woman. I said, but it's hard being a black woman.
Come on.
Really hard.
Come on. And Brother Lamar, talk to us about, from your vantage point, working with teachers, working with students, working in various communities. There are some very severe consequences that come along with denying history, not speaking truthfully about what has happened in the past. There are some very, very major consequences for that.
Yeah, I mean, there are consequences for me to talk about what I'm talking about now. I mean, to be real clear, I'm in some pretty heavy states, Wisconsin, Mississippi, Florida, but this is important. Our work is not centered around critical race theory. I tell people all the time. I said, I've rarely seen a person teaching that. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but that's not our approach. I'm very unapologetic of being a man of African descent and love our culture. But there are consequences when we don't teach our kids the right thing. We just celebrated to the Sananda and I, who we're in Prince George's County. We just worked with 25 black boys. Some of them are indigenous African boys. Maryland had a document that they created about the achievement of black and brown boys, a dismal piece of research about, and you all know where they are. Only several schools decided to use the money to support the boys. So you got this huge document that you created. You have all this money that people can access, and only a couple of schools decided that they wanted to do something. And our organization was one of them. We celebrated 25 boys by working with them. 10 weeks, David Miller came in, and his book, Khalil's Way, they read his book about bullying and his black boy. So you can see the consequences when you don't get it right. And so this is an opportunity to pour into these children, and then for the girls to see it. Then we also need to do the same thing for our girls. But again, history is so important, because the reality is, when you control that pen, it says a whole lot about sort of where you are. And so again, if you are not allowing these young people, to be who they are, our greetings, Farajii, when I walk to any building, it's a greeting that comes out of South Africa, and it says Sawubona. And Sawubona says, I see you. It says, Bakari, I see you. And it says, Farajii, I see you. And for those who remember, there was a TV show called Romper Room where this woman would say, I see you. And Farajii, this guy said to me, he says, but she never saw me. I want you to think about that. He said, but she never saw me. So could you imagine that there's kids in these buildings who don't, what they call in our world, no touches, that nobody has spoke to them, nobody has greeted them. So I tell teachers, this is what I do, Farajii. I said, I want you to just write down 5 kids, and I want you to observe them throughout the day. And I want you to see how people engage them. And then one of the teachers came back and said, there was this one kid that nobody said anything to. And I said, that's an issue. Nobody greeted him. Nobody shook his hand. Nobody asked him, how was he sleeping? Nobody asked him, what are you reading today? Nobody did that. So I have an issue with that when we're not engaging our children to check in. So that greetings of Sawubona is a simple greeting, Farajii. It makes the invisible visible. It makes the person who as Ralph Ellison said, I'm invisible simply because they refuse to see me. What I'm loving about this generation, they want to know the culture. They want people to talk about who they are and where they come from. So I'm encouraging you to keep doing not only what you're doing here and what you and Bakari are doing, but teachers push back. And parents will support you. But teachers are under fire as well. Teachers are under fire with the books. We know that banning books. There's a district I'm working with. I won't name the district, banning more books. They call us and we have to have a conversation. There's a district that we work with, Bakari and Farajii, where, and you can Google this. This white kid said that the teacher put duct tape on his face because he didn't want to wear a mask.
Wow.
The law enforcement came in. The Proud Boys, and I don't get a chance to talk about this a lot. The Proud Boys came to this state and protested. The teacher and the principal, who are people of color, had to be under police protection because they were threatened. They found out for it to be a lie. The young man made it up. It didn't happen. The Proud Boys protested. They came down there, and then because the kid had special needs, that was a whole nother issue. So now you have legal issues. So again, our children are taking what their parents are saying and they're throwing it back into teachers who are like, I ain't down for. And if you look at the NPR story, Farajii, teachers are leaving the classroom at a faster rate than any other profession. And we need our teachers in the classroom.
And one of the other big parts of this whole conversation, Brother Lamar and Bakari, is the fact that you have a number of Black parents who are choosing to leave the public school system to go into either charter schools or to go homeschool their children. What's your take on that, Brother Lamar, considering where the state of education is right now?
Man, I wish I had time to homeschool my kids. My kids would be some dropouts if I had time to homeschool. The Shields kids ain't ready for the Shields curriculum. I think it's great if you have the time. It's not easy to homeschool your children. There's some great homeschool networks that are out there. Mocha moms, some Black women are doing some great things. I think it's really, really great. But a lot of times our kids aren't socialized well. So that socialization piece, we people of African descent, we thrive around being people, being around people rather. So I think a lot of times we sort of miss out on that. Not saying that everybody does, but I think that it's real important to think of alternatives, to think of, and you're seeing this mass exodus of kids leaving the public school system, moving out to different areas, parents staying home with them. You got some white liberal parents who are like, they're sick and tired too. They're out there protesting just as much as many as I'm seeing, just as much as many of the people of color who are doing the exact same thing, man. My thing is whatever we resist grows stronger. Discomfort occurs when we learn. And so you're gonna learn through this situation. That's why I use mindfulness. One of my favorite books is called Mindful of Race. Ruth King, Bakari, check her book out, a dope sister out of Oakland. And mindfulness has really kept me balanced in this work because, again, it allows me to be more reflective. It requires presence, patience, and non-judgment, but it also requires curiosity and compassion. And if we can help people be more compassionate with one another, then I think we can accomplish some things. But the reality is you have to be involved in your child's education. When my kids come home, Farajii and Bakari, and they call a teacher racist, I said, no, we ain't going there. Because that racism, calling a person racist is a highly loaded word. There's so many other words that I need to teach you. Implicit bias. I need to teach you about calling people in and stop calling people out. Bakari, call me in. Say, did I hear you say, don't say gay or what are you? Call people in. The days of calling people out is needs to go out the window because we need to call people in. And I'll give you an example. I'm not going to say where it happened, but a friend of mine was talking to the sister who is biracial. All right. And he said to her, what are you? I'm going to pause right there. What are you? No. And I said to him, I said, you could have said, so where are you from? Where's your family from? But could you imagine somebody coming up to my nephew, your son, what are you? Wow. So again, I don't blame him, but even people of color, Bakari, know we need to learn the vocabulary. And one of the things that we do, you ask me what teachers do, Bakari, when you work with us, we give you an equity vocabulary. We talk about cisgender, we talk about the word queer, we talk about all these words because again, you all know that Farajii, you have a young kid that one of the defining factors in how intelligent a kid is in school is how strong their vocabulary is. If a kid has a very strong, so why then, Bakari, why don't we teach teachers this vocabulary of critical race theory, equity, so when they're having these conversations, they can pull these words out. and stop calling people out of their names, you know, and stop saying, well, I'm going to call him, I'm going to call him her. I don't know what the hell I need to call him. You're going to say, well, what are you? Come on. And my mother, who's biracial, you know, now she's sharing stories with my children even more, Farajii, stuff that I didn't even know, how coming up from Mississippi, light skin, long hair, and she's sharing with her grandchildren these challenges that she had. Never heard of this stuff in my life. They're still affecting my mother to this day. And so again, the power of the tongue, man, is it's detrimental to all of us.
Absolutely.
We all need to be mindful of what we say out of our mouths.
Absolutely, brother Lamar. It has our time has been very, very well spent. How can people get more information about the work you're doing, brother?
Well, man, tomorrow and Bakari, listen, we have the Shortcut Show at the Reginald Lewis Museum. Shout out to Ford. Shout out to Smithsonian. It's called the Men of Change exhibit, Farajii. I know we're going to pull you in. It's an amazing exhibit. It's at the Reginald Lewis Museum in Baltimore. We have 5 comedians, man, who are going to blow it up, and they're going to talk about what does it mean to be a black man in America. Shout out to, you know, Chris Rock and Dick Gregory and all those individuals. So tomorrow, man, come to the Reginald Lewis Museum in Baltimore. Check us out. Bakari, thank you for participating in the show. I can be followed at Change Agent 2 on Instagram. My show behind me, Sound Bombing, that's my podcast. I ain't big like Bakari and Farajii hanging out with Roland. I got a makeshift studio in my house. I got to hook something up. Got the sheets hanging behind me. Got the clothesline and the sheets over there. So check me out at Sound Bombing Podcast. But if you in Maryland, come to the Shortcut Show. We got a dope show. If you want to tell a story, we got an opportunity. Bakari, it's been too long. We got to reconnect. I want to know where you got that fly suit. Bakari had this fly suit on, Farajii, at the show.
No doubt. I have no doubt.
I didn't know Bakari because Bakari had a different cut on the show.
Please.
So he let it grow.
Bakari, but when you tell Bakari to show out, Bakari's going to show out.
Come on, man.
Bakari got that relationship with Banana Republic. I used to have it when I was a kid.
Wow.
When I was, you know, Farajii, I'd say BC, before children, when I could go to Banana Republic. Bakari had that fly suit on, telling that amazing story on that big stage. Yeah, I know. I checked you out.
Thank you, bro. I think it was a compliment in there, Dr. Shields. Thank you. Thank you.
I like how you just played me. I think that was a compliment.
I think it was wrinkled in there somewhere.
Right.
I love y'all. Hey, I'm out of here. We got rehearsal tonight, brother. I got to get down for Mark.
No problem.
Hey, Mark will beat me up, Bakari. You know, Mark will beat me up. I got to get to rehearsal.
Oh, you know.
Hey, Dr. Lamar Shields, founder of the Combio Group. Also, he's an author, speaker. Check him out on Instagram and Facebook. And Brother Lamar, we will be talking soon. Thank you so much, big brother, for being a part of this conversation.
Love y'all.
Folks, love you too, big brother. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's talk about Amazon and how now the LGBTQIA community in Seattle said, Amazon, we don't need your support for Pride. Let's get into that discussion. And also, it's Friday, so I got to give you this week's last word. Stay with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network.
am Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, it looks like the e-commerce giant Amazon has taken a hit from a very, very important part of the community. Seattle Pride has cut ties with Amazon over the e-commerce giant's corporate donations and its alleged request to have its name as part of the city's annual LGBTQIA Pride March. Now, Seattle Pride was established to be responsible, which is a nonprofit group. They're established to be responsible to oversee all of the activities during the month of Pride in June, and they've been around since 1974. But the issue that they had with Amazon is that Amazon wanted to give them money in exchange for putting their name on the moniker. So instead of it being Seattle Pride Parade, Amazon wanted it to be Seattle Pride Parade presented by Amazon in exchange for $100,000. Now, this is according to the group's executive director, Crystal Marks, and she issued a statement earlier this week on Tuesday saying it is deeply concerned about the Seattle-based company's donation to anti-LGBTQ politicians and its fundraising efforts for anti-LGBTQ groups. Wow. She also said that Pride isn't for sale at any time of the year, but especially the month of June when our community comes together to celebrate. When someone has their name attached to the title of a full event that we haven't had for 2 years, it makes me as a queer individual think this parade is going to be entirely about Amazon and celebrating their contribution. Want to bring in Bakari Jones, Culture Crew member. Bakari, you have been working on a lot of different LGBTQIA activities. First and foremost, have you ever heard of something like this happening before?
Not necessarily on this level. I mean, I think that, people pivot related to their sponsors all the time for these types of reasons. So it's not unheard of, but I think it's to me, it's super interesting to see the Amazon. First of all, just the size and the scale that Amazon is. I'm like, y'all only giving $100,000? I think I would have said, yeah, I'll take my flag on elsewhere as well for that same reason. Just dollar amount wise, at least, if that be the case, at least come stronger or deeper pocket wise, right? Than what they're coming with $100,000. Relatively speaking, when it comes to putting on a massive festival, especially after you haven't had one for 2 years, and I know 100K is it's probably only, you know, one of several other corporate sponsorships that they've received, but
yeah,
like relatively speaking, yeah, I mean, it can cost millions of dollars to produce festivals, large scale events. So I don't necessarily know the scope of their budget, but I think if you're not coming on as a title sponsor and covering a substantial majority of the cost, I completely understand. The other thing I have to say, as a Black queer person, and Dr. Shields mentioned, you know, Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, who coined the term intersectionality. This for me is also a really interesting topic, because typically, you know, when someone says Seattle Pride, right, it is generally speaking, it's open to everyone. But there are also Black Pride events, specifically because of the racism within the LGBTQ community. So for me, it's even more interesting to see the way that this is playing out, or is going to play out, in terms of their sponsors, to see what other organizations come on board, and whether or not organizations that do or don't also go on to support specifically Black Pride events that tend to be more inclusive of, at the very least, Black queer people, and oftentimes, you know, inclusive of other cultures as well.
Yeah. So one of the big things that Seattle Pride, you know, when I say that they were kind of against Amazon, first Amazon wanted to put the name on the parade, but then also once the Seattle Pride started to do some digging on Amazon and saw that they gave money, and this is they use a report, and I use this report for data as well, from the nonprofit group Open Secrets. And they found that Amazon has donated more than $450,000 last year to lawmakers who opposed the Equality Act.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the federal legislation which passed the House of Representatives last year, but it was stalled in the Senate. But it would prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity in numerous areas across the country, including employment, housing, education, and public accommodations. Then Amazon also reportedly donated more than $11,000 to lawmakers in Washington state since 2020, who have pursued an anti-LGBTQ legislation in the 2022 legislative session. And so they're like, wait a minute, y'all just giving money all over the place. Y'all just trying to get your name out there for one group of people, then for another group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, Bakari, like, this is a playbook, I think, that a lot of people can kind of take from,
mm-hmm.
right? That even if somebody offers you some money, to take the time to do the research, to understand and to see if they really are supporting your cause, or if they're just using you
mm-hmm.
to take their brand, to take their to further their platform. But I see Black organizations possibly doing this, Latino organizations for possibly doing this. Like, when Amazon comes to the table, we all should know they come to the table to take over. They ain't coming to the table just a partner. They want a sizable piece of the pie. And it's not just for Amazon. This is for any company or any group that anytime you partner with anybody, you got to do your due diligence to see, okay, what's your track record
mm-hmm.
in this particular cause? That's something that came up during the protest of George Floyd and all of the other
mm-hmm.
protests that we see back in 2020. You had all of these people that's like, supporting us. I see companies that, we are supporting the racial reckoning of 2020 and blah, 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 and we're going to put up some money. And I'm like, Walmart putting up $1 million.
Mm-hmm. So I will never forget this analogy that was used when I was in school of X company donating $10,000 towards breast cancer research. They had one of those big jumbo checks printed, and then they spent 10 times that, so like $100,000, marketing the fact that they had donated $10,000 towards breast cancer research. So it's all right. Like, so just knowing that is I'm not necessarily saying that is 100%, confirmed that that's what Amazon is doing, but we see the ways that these companies are able to leverage their dollars and marketing strategy, right? Because they're going to give one amount to the actual, or they were going to give one amount, right, to Seattle Pride. And it just begs the question, how much then were they going to spend marketing the fact that they gave 100? I mean, and 100K to Amazon is nothing, literally nothing. So how much were they going to spend to market the fact that they had made that contribution to that company? So I completely agree, Farajii, doing your due diligence. And, I think in this instance, being able to hold the line. And like I said, this is something for me that I'm very curious about, to see what other companies then, how do they position themselves against or around Amazon to say Amazon wouldn't do it, step in, we want to be proud supporters and partners of. There's so many different angles and spins that could be played and taken on this particular move by Amazon. So
and I'm gonna be very transparent here, because I did not know that Pride, for the month of Pride and Pride Parade activities around the country, I didn't know sponsors were even involved. Part of me is like, because I have done some work with at Pride. My wife has done some work at Pride here in Baltimore, and I didn't see big banners of sponsors in the park. And I was kind of like, oh, I didn't know. I thought Pride was always funded or supported by the city or the state that these activities took place in. Am I wrong in thinking that?
No, I mean, they can be, but there's nothing stopping in most of the, in many instances, there's nothing stopping these entities from securing a national partner or a national sponsor. When you consider the cost of having different performers or vendors, I mean, again, just festival event wise, all these things add up, right? So I believe that most Pride organizations or LGBTQ resource centers, whoever it is that is hosting Pride, they have a usually multifaceted approach where they get into both donations and sponsorships to be able to finance whatever the activities are.
And you mentioned something, and I don't want people to just kind of gloss over it, but you said that there is some racism within the LGBTQIA community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, how do Black queers, for example, handle that, especially when it comes to celebrating who you are during the month of Pride? It seems like there's a unified effort that everybody is on the same page, but how is that different from what we generally see, or what you've personally, you may have experienced, or your friends may have experienced with that?
This, for me, this was part of the reason that I started the event series, Her Sweet Release, that I was hosting, pre-pandemic. Part of that reason was that there were events available during Pride season, which is usually in the month of June. But the offerings specifically for Black women were incredibly limited. And I remember one year I hosted an event, and Pride actually reached out to me and asked me to pay to list my event amongst Pride activities. So just going back to the sponsorship strategy, and approach, I declined it because I felt like, I know that I'm catering to an audience that exists. You all aren't catering to that audience, which is why I'm having the event, and you were asking me to pay to be.
Come on. I feel you. So I feel you. So like, wait a minute, hold on. I'm bringing people that you're not reaching, and you want me to pay you for what? like I'm already getting my audience. Y'all need to pay me.
Exactly. That was literally my approach. I was like, I know that this is a captive audience. It's not really any different than any, we just had the NCAA come here, right? So it's a Pride. It comes up every year. People are looking for things to do. And again, there just wasn't anyone catering to that audience. I think that the racism exists internally, and a lot of times it doesn't, we saw it most recently, I think, in the state of Maryland around marriage equality. There were all types of political organizers who were working with Black people, arm in arm, around marriage equality to be able to get Black and brown people out to vote in favor of marriage equality. And once marriage equality was passed, those same predominantly white organizers vacated the same communities, vacated the same LGBTQ, bars, lounges, etc., because they, mission accomplished, they were able to pack up and head out. So it's also not that same level of solidarity across racial lines within the LGBTQ community until, and I hate to say it, but until, if there's something that requires the same way we've been talking about all day, when Black votes are required, then we start to see things shift and pivot towards and pander, honestly, towards this particular demographic. And it's a lot of times it's the same exact, it's just, a sort of ripple effect of what we see on a larger scale within the LGBTQ community. And it's fascinating. It's unfortunate. It's terrible. It's deplorable all at the same time, because again, you have these intersecting identities. So Black queer experiences, I think it's safe to say across the board, generally speaking, they're not the same as, white queer experiences. So.
Right. And that's interesting. And I'm glad that you kind of, highlighted that, because I don't think people really understand the dynamics. You know what I mean? It's just like within the feminist movement, Black feminists and white feminists.
Exactly.
And I think, for as we've been talking about history and racism, I mean, it undergirds so many elements of who we are and how we live our lives and just so many things that it touches everything. It touches every one of us in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
And the LGBTQIA community is no different, and is certainly not immune to some of the poison that comes along with being Black, a Black woman, a Black queer woman. I mean, it's just it's still a lot of barriers there. It's definitely a lot of barriers. Bakari, I appreciate you. You always bringing the fire on the Fridays for me. So I truly appreciate your time and spending time with us today and giving us your insight. You got any upcoming events or anything that you're working on that you want the people to know about?
Not any events that I'm planning just yet. I'm still tiptoeing around, big bad COVID a little bit, but I'm a program manager over at Impact Hub. So if you know any Baltimore-based business for folks that are watching from Baltimore, please check out empowerbaltimore.com to potentially help your small business get your website up and running or refreshed.
That's what I'm talking about. Bakari Jones, thank you so much for being so good for the culture.
Appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, my last word, stay with us. It's the culture on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Folks, this week's last word is history. We saw history being made this week, of course, with the Supreme Court confirmation hearing of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. We saw history being made, not just the fact that this is a Black woman who is being nominated for the highest court in the land, but this was a very contentious questioning that we saw, something that we've never seen. And I think a lot of us recognize that there is something inherently wrong. There is something inherently happening in this country that is taking root in a very, very big and historic way. We also reported on the historic measures being taken by the U.S. and its allies against Russia in terms of sanctions, and other measures that are happening, and the breakneck speed in which this whole conflict is constantly evolving. And there is great history dealing with that. Of course, we continue to have these conversations, ongoing conversations about the philosophy, the idea of critical race theory. You just heard Dr. Lamar Shields sharing us a little bit about the work that he does, his approach. But there is history in that. And I'm bringing this all up because I truly believe that as we look at all of this history, as we are engaged with this history and involved with this history, there's a unique role that history has, and that is a unique role that history plays, as it can be used as both a teaching tool and a guide, and it can be used as a warning. This is why history has been known to us, and this is why it's important for us to know history, for us to teach history, and most importantly, to understand it in its fullest context, because in essence, history is really an expression of truth. Whatever has happened, let me just share this with you folks, and I got my notes here, but because I want to make sure I'm really speaking to a couple of quick points. But whatever has happened in the past, we can't change it. It's already happened. And guess what? We just have to accept it, just like we do the truth. And so when we don't know or we don't understand the history or circumstance of the historic nature of a moment, then we are robbed of having the ability to see during uncertain times as we are experiencing right now, folks. So depending on the lens by which you are looking at things, right? Depending on the lens by which you interpret things, your interpretation of history will dictate how you respond. History will force us to make a decision. That's one of the compelling powers of learning those lessons. It would force us to make a decision, whether you will act or rest, whether you believe or disbelieve, or whether you will stand or sit still. Just know that we are in a time where we are going to have to make a decision, that we don't have the liberty to sit or the liberty to just know history. We have to make a decision today about whether we're going to make history. Just know that whatever decision you make, and that someone before you made the same decision. And now it's up to you whether you want to continue, whether you want that outcome to be their history, or you want it to be your history. Let us take this time to reflect on what has happened this past week and think about how we can make history, how we can do something outside of our comfort zone, how we can think differently, how we can take on a different perspective, and how we can, most importantly, clean the lens by which we see things through. Because history represents all that we know, all that we understand. But one thing for sure is, if you teach history or if you understand history in a limited capacity, that means that your response, your actions are going to be limited. That's my last word for this week. I appreciate you for tuning in. Also, I appreciate the many comments that you have been sharing with us for these number of these discussions all this week. And I'm very, very happy that you have continuing to show us support. And it just forces us, and it just forces us to make sure that we're doing the right thing, that we're on the right track. I see so many conversations happening in the chat on both our YouTube and our Facebook page. So many of us are discussing pertinent issues. But let me just share this with you. And I'm going to just give you a little bit of things, something to look forward to, a little trailer of what to expect. This is not going to just be a platform to discuss things. My hope is that this will serve, and I'm saying this as being the culture, will serve as a platform that is going to activate us. It's going to require us to do something different, and it's going to require us to become more engaged. And I'm going to do all that I can to get that ball rolling. So as we are inching up on 2 months of having this show, things are going to move a little bit faster for the culture. We're going to be doing more. We're going to bring on different voices. And guess what? That's required. That's necessary. But I have the vision in my head and I have the focus in my mind that guess what? We can't allow the things to stay the same. We can't just go along to get along. We have to do something different. And that's what the culture is. That's what we represent. And guess what? We could change the culture to be what we want it to be because we have the power because we are the culture. All right, folks, continue to show your support for us on Black Star Network. You can do so at blackstarnetwork.com, and you can support us on all of our, taking money from Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, whatever it is. We need your support at Black Star Network. So go to our website at blackstarnetwork.com. If you don't have any money, it's cool. You can just simply tell your friends and family and share the shows with us. But share the shows, put them out there. Let's have conversations about them. You can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter and Facebook at Farajii Muhammad. There's only one Farajii, so there's only that spells it the way I spell it. But you can definitely share all of your thoughts and share with me. And let's continue to build. Let's continue to connect. Let's continue to discuss ideas. Let's not be afraid to bring ideas to the conversation. Let's move forward because I want to see progress just like you want to see progress. And that's what we're doing here with Black-owned media. We're taking the conversations to the next level, and we need your support. So blackstarnetwork.com. All right, my time has been very well spent. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned at the 6 o'clock hour. My big brother, Roland Martin Unfiltered. Thank you for a fantastic week. Next week, we got some very special guests planned, so I can't wait to share and for you to check them out. But that's how it'll happen in next week. God willing, we will see each other on Monday. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk on Monday for another exciting edition of The Culture, exclusively, only here on the Black Star Network. Peace.